Hello everyone, I am the Lore Explorer, and we are back with the Outer Wilds. If you haven't, remember to support it for the Game Awards. You can vote now. I just googled Game Awards and voted there. But today, we are going to talk about the Nomai shuttles. I did a quick tutorial on it earlier, but going back to watch it, I wasn't so clear. I didn't even show you the console to control it. So today, we will do just that, and visit a bunch of the planets along the way. That way you can explore the universe along with me. To start, we will head to Brittle's Hollow Gravity Cannon. On a platform below lay a Nomai tube system. It's basically a switch. Switch this to the right and your new ride pops out of nowhere. Once inside, we can get a look of the console. There are 3 slots with a ball resting at the bottom. Another switch that should be labeled, to be honest, but left launches the shuttle. The middle slot recalls the shuttle back, like the switch on the pad below called it here. And the switch on the right lands on the body close by if you are inside its gravitational field. Now that we have actually covered the basics of the craft, we can talk about the mechanics. These planets are already moving through space. If we look at the map, we can see an orbit line. The bright line is where we just were, and the dull line is the way that we are already moving through space along with the planet. So if we launch directly on the dull line, we will add to the speed we already have from the planet we are on. This is called firing prograde. In turn, if we fire on the bright line, it's called retrograde, and we cancel out all the speed we already have. At this point, the sun's gravity takes over and starts pulling us in towards the sun. If we get too close to the sun, don't worry because you can just use the middle slot to return home. For an example, we will do an easy flight to start from Brittle's Hollow, firing retrograde. Head to Brittle Hollow's gravity cannon right at the beginning of the loop. Once in the craft, go to the map mode to see which way we are pointing with the cannon. Intuitively, this will make no sense, but just trust me. We are going to fire retrograde when the cannon is not pointing at anything. Right before the cannon touches the bright white line, back out of the map and fire the shuttle. We will have cancelled out most of our speed, and the sun starts to pull us in. Since we didn't fire directly retrograde, we still have a little bit of movement in the same direction Brittle Hollow was taking us. The result is sort of diagonal line straight towards the Hourglass Twins. Check the map once close to judge the best time to use the right slot, which is when you're at your closest point, provided you don't hit it directly. You'll know when you actually hit the target because the craft will turn to hone in on the planet below and will start to gently bring you down using some sort of gravity technology. For the next launch, we are going to go to Dark Bramble. I know it sounds daunting, but trust me, they've got it down to a science. Again, right at the beginning of the loop, head to Ember's twin. Surprised? Well, I was pretty surprised that we got to Dark Bramble from the closest planet to the sun. It seems counterintuitive. Anyway, once there, head right down and recall the shuttle. Get in immediately and wait for Ash Twin to come into view. As soon as it passes, launch the shuttle. You basically want to skim Ash Twin. If we were just point and shoot, we'd show up where Bramble was, so we have to aim where it's going to be. Astronauts would call this planning flight trajectories and waiting for launch windows. I picked these few examples because they have early launch windows and they are the hardest planets to get to. It'll take a while for the shuttle to get to Dark Bramble, but just trust in the Nomai technology and keep checking the map to make sure you don't pass it up. Once close by, again, use the right slot and it'll slowly start pulling you into Dark Bramble. If you get lucky, you might get a hole-in-one. For our last example, we are going to go to the Interloper. It may be challenging, but it's worth the flight. So we're going to head to Brittle's Hollow right at the beginning of the loop. With this, we will have hit the 3 hardest bodies in the game to fly to with the shuttles. There is no point in the loop where the cannons are facing prograde and the Interloper. So for this flight, we will have to shoot mostly retrograde and make use of those mechanics. Instead of launching directly retrograde, we will fire right before the cannon touches the last big square on the grid before the orbit line. This will cancel out most of our speed, but not all of it, and since we fired slightly away from the sun, we will also cancel its pull for a while. This leaves us slowly drifting in the direction Brittle's Hollow already had us moving. It's a pretty short flight, so I suggest checking your map to gauge how fast you're moving towards the interloper. Once close, use the right slot to initiate the landing. It's actually pretty cool, since the interloper is moving so fast, it takes a while for us to catch up. We may end up flinging around the sun, so close that it burns but not kills you, all the while just being pulled into the interloper. And with that, we visited the 3 hardest planets, or bodies in the game to visit. So, if I really explained it correctly, you should be able to use these ideas or methods to get to the other planets in the game. Most of the time you want to be firing prograde, but for these few examples, we had to use retrograde. So to sum it up, all you have to do is really wait for the launch windows, and make sure you know what happens when you fire prograde versus when you fire retrograde. So, if I explain these concepts right, you should be able to use these methods to visit the other planets in the game. And with that, this is the Lore Explorer diving deep into the mechanics so that I can bring you the joy of spaceflight.